An astronomer must be cosmopolitan, because ignorant statesmen cannot be expected to value their services.
The Interplanetary Podcast. The exploration of space for the benefit of all mankind. Your hosts here in London, Matthew Russell and Jamie Franklin.
Oh yeah, baby, Tycho.
Baby Trump.
Oh, don't start with him. Matt, who was that?
Tycho Brahe.
That might be one of the best names ever.
He's absolutely one of the coolest people ever anyway.
So we bigged up Galileo last week, and he stood on the shoulders of a giant. And this is that giant, isn't it?
Tycho Brahe, born on the 14th of December, 1546.
He's pretty old.
Yeah, so he's older than a whole generation earlier than Galileo.
Incredible stuff.
He came up with the Tychonic system.
Okay.
So which he saw the moon as orbiting the Earth and the planets orbiting the sun. But unfortunately still had the sun orbiting the Earth, which was a bit annoying.
So Matt, he was the last of the major naked eye astronomers working without telescopes for his observations. You would have thought that that'd be pretty difficult in that era.
Yeah, impressive. I know, it is impressive because, he measured precisely stellar novae or new stars, which we now, of course, call supernovae. In particular, there was one huge one that happened at the time, and most people consider it one of the most important events in astronomy. Supernova 1572 happened in the year. What year do you reckon that happened in?
You're going to tell me 1572,
I
aren't
am.
you?
In the constellation of Cassiopeia.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and what he showed was that there was no parallax. So it couldn't be a sublunar phenomena, as in something, it can't be nearer than the moon, which everyone thought. And so he showed that it must be out in space somewhere, which damaged quite a few of the kind of assumptions at the time that somehow the heavens were immutable.
Oh, he's a bit clever then.
Oh, he's considered one of the very first people who really, really stuck to observation and made sense of the world through observation. So as Edwin Arthur Burt wrote in his doctoral thesis, The Metaphysical Foundations of Modern Physical Science, he said he was the first competent mind in modern astronomy to feel ardently the passion for exact empirical facts.
Oof.
Yes, how cool is that?
Stick that in your pipe and smoke it, yeah?
That supernova was such an important event that Johannes Kepler, who was Tycho Brahe's student for a while and helper and assistant. Johannes Kepler sought out Tycho Brahe because of Tycho Brahe's absolutely genius observations and meticulous data collection. So Johannes Kepler knew that this was the man to hang out with to further his career. I think Kepler was very, very ambitious, and he kept publishing the book Concerning the Star, New and Never Before Seen in the Life or Memory of Anyone, which was Tycho.
I love
it's an ace title, isn't it? Tycho Brahe's book about the supernova 1572, later to be called, of course, well, most people refer to it as Tycho's supernova. And Chandra, oh my gosh, you've got to see Chandra's pictures of Tycho's supernova remnant, because it's there.
Can we put some up on the Instagram page?
We absolutely will. It's like a big, looks like a sort of ball of fluff. It's just genius, so good.
It's ace.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's one of my. It is. Everyone will be aware of the picture, maybe not realise what it is, but yeah, what a fantastic.
Well, Matt, would you like some alternative culture? Because it's possible that SN 1572 is the, and I quote, star that's westward from the pole in Shakespeare's Hamlet.
Ooh, that's cool, isn't it? That really is cool.
That is cool.
So my favourite fact about Tycho, and one that is often referred to in science things, is that he had a duel with his fellow Danish nobleman his cousin Mandrup Parsberg, and they had a quarrel about who was the best mathematician.
Who won?
Well, I don't know, but Tycho Brahe had his nose cut off. Literally,
Ooh.
not just metaphysically, but actually had his nose cut off.
Oh my
and
God.
had to wear a prosthetic nose, which most people thought was made of silver or gold. But it turned out that researchers who dug up his body in 2012 found that it was probably made of brass and glued on.
Hang on a minute. Let's just rewind for a second. Let me just get this straight. He was having an argument with his cousin about who was the best mathematician.
That's the kind of arguments we have.
And his and his cousin cut his nose off
with a sword. Yeah.
Jeez.
And this was an engagement party, so you can imagine that his
Oh God. I mean, if anything's going to kill the ambiance, it's that, isn't it?
Yeah, 4 days before his birthday as well. So around about now as we record this. so yeah, how funny is that?
I mean, it would have been aggressive to just punch him in the face, but cut his nose off with a sword. I just can't get over that. That's really over the top. That's how, bloody hell, Mandara.
Yeah, but that's how people dealt with their arguments back then. They thought it was totally cool to have duels. That's how it was done. Jamie, that's how it was just done, man.
I think I'd rather be shot in the head than someone cut my nose off with a sword.
Well, yeah, you do have a very lovely nose, Jamie. It'd be a pity for me to...
Some great nose. I couldn't go on without this.
Well, just don't argue with me about who's the best podcaster. That's how to avoid having your nose cut off, Jamie.
The listeners know anyway. So let's carry on.
So, Jamie...
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Do you know any objects out in space or otherwise named after our hero of the week?
Well, when you said it, it made me think of a lunar crater. Am I right?
You were absolutely right. Everyone's favourite lunar crater that you can really clearly see with the naked eye is Tycho, of course. Named after
it's a big one.
Tycho, yeah. And he's also got one on Mars as well. Tycho Brahe on Mars, yeah.
Oh.
And a minor planet in the asteroid belt. 1677 Tycho Brahe.
When am I going to get a minor planet named after me?
Well, very soon, Jamie. Well, you just have.
I hope so.
Maybe you'll need to discover one. But hey, Jamie,
Matt. Well, is there? I was going to say, is there anywhere that our listeners can go to if they want to learn a bit more?
Well, I would imagine a place in Copenhagen. How do you say Copenhagen? I've always said Copenhagen.
I'll say it that. Yeah, Copenhagen.
Yeah, the Tycho Brahe Planetarium.
Can we go?
Well, we should definitely go. Next time we're in Denmark. Copenhagen is in Denmark, isn't it?
I bloody love Denmark. I had one of the best meals of my life there.
Right.
Not in the restaurant that everyone thinks, but a different one. There you go. I hope that's interesting for everyone.
It's a good fact.
But you will be pleased to know that I had a chocolate mousse with bits of bacon in it, and you're probably thinking, "Oh, weird." It was incredible.
Chocolate mousse with bacon in it. This story has become better. It's the kind of thing where your nose might drop off eating it.
And I'll tell you what, it would be worth it then.
Yeah.
So, Matt, I know that you've been a bit. You got angry this week.
Yeah.
I want to know why.
Well, one of the reasons why I chose that particular Tycho Brahe quote, because ignorant statesmen cannot be expected to value their services. It's precisely what's going on. So the fourth National Climate Assessment, which, by the way, is like this culmination of all the major science bodies in America, like especially NASA, using all that data, and even the Department of Defense and all these places have to deliver this report every 5 years, I think.
Okay.
And basically, it reads like an absolute horror story. It's we are basically doomed unless we start doing something very, very radical and very, very soon, i.e. reduce CO2 by 45% before 2030. So that is pretty massive.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but it's really, really bad. So what does Trump do?
Let me guess. Does he think it's a hoax by China?
He actually tweeted, "I don't believe it." That's it. Just glibly strokes it away with you don't get the chance to not just go, "I don't believe it." Of course you can disagree with things.
That's what facts are for. You absolute end.
So unfortunately, the lives of everyone on the planet are being affected by leaders like Trump and other ignorant statesmen ignoring the services of their astronomers and scientists. And it makes me mad.
Oh God, it's so depressing.
Yeah, it's really bad. We could really do without that kind of statesman. It's not an argument born out of any kind of scientific rigor or knowledge. It's so annoying. Ah.
Oh, don't get me started, Matt.
If you have an argument in good faith that disagrees with that, that's fine. There are some scientists who still, very, very few, but still in good faith have some doubts about this type of climate change. If that's okay, as long as the argument's in good faith. But if you find that the argument is being financed by people, it's horrendous, isn't it?
Political rant of the week.
Jamie, space word of the week.
You're not going to slam dunk gravitational redshift in my face, are you?
I absolutely am going to do gravitational redshift.
I nearly said ass.
Talking of ass, podcast 111. That's what we're in, and of course 111. Apart from being a perfect totient number, Jamie.
Oh yeah,
is also a score in cricket called the Nelson.
Is it?
Yeah. So
why is that?
Because he allegedly lost one eye, one arm, and one leg. But that's not true. It's not even true.
Oh.
He didn't lose a leg. So most people think it might mean because one eye, one arm, one arsehole.
What, he lost an arsehole?
No, he is an arsehole, I think.
Oh. That makes more sense.
Yeah, there we go. With a lot of swearing in this episode.
Oh, there's going to be a lot of bleeps. I'm loving it.
Yeah, if you were in New Zealand, you'd call the emergency services on 111.
There's been a crime in podcasting.
Dial 111. Yeah, gravitational redshift.
What's the story?
So I loved this story, and of course it falls back with Galileo. So the Galileo satellites have been used to get the most accurate measurement ever of Einstein's theory of general relativity, nailing down this gravitational redshift.
Oh.
Yes, there's a paper called Gravitational Redshift Test using eccentric Galileo satellites. And it doesn't refer to Galileo being eccentric, although I'm pretty certain he was. It refers to the type of orbit they're in. Not quite circular, in other words. And that's by P. Delver et al. So, yes.
Well, that's what I was just about to say.
Yes, there's 2 European teams that were working in parallel to get a 5-fold improvement on an experiment done a long time ago. Let me just see if I can find that. Who cares? Oh,
yeah.
No, 1976. The Gravity Probe A Hydrogen Maser rocket experiment. If you want to look that up, if you wanted to work out how they did it. But yes, Galileo satellites 5 and 6.
5 and 6.
Thanks to a malfunctioning Soyuz, a phrase that we're becoming more and more accustomed to.
Sadly.
Basically, 5 and 6 were sent into the wrong orbit, and they thought, damn, we've lost them. But ESA flight controllers were able to lower the point of the satellites and make them more circular. But now the orbits are much more elliptical than they should be.
Okay.
And so they climb 8,500 kilometers twice a day. So as they go round, it goes low and high and low and high, 8,500 kilometers. So they go through a gravitational field twice a day.
Oh.
A changing gravitational field, of course, as they come closer to Earth and further away from Earth. Now, I had known about the effect that the satellite's speed has on its time, and obviously because they're travelling much faster than we are, you have to take time dilation into account. And if you didn't, your sat nav would drift by 10 kilometres a day if they didn't take general relativity into account. So that's pretty phenomenal anyway. But also, this smaller effect is the gravity. The effect of gravity has on your time. And as Einstein predicted, in the effect of a gravitational field, your time either slows up or speeds up relative to someone else's in a different gravitational field. They've been able to use these two wayward eccentric satellites to test that very effect to the best ever degree.
So isn't it amazing, Matt, the things that are going on that a lot of people just don't know about that could have massive... Imagine how much of an effect that would have on sat-navs if that happened all the time.
Yeah, well...
It'd be a nightmare.
So each Galileo satellite carries 2 rubidium and 2 hydrogen maser clocks, so essentially 4 insane timekeeping devices. Get this, the hydrogen maser clocks, they are stable to 1 second every 3 million years.
What? Come on.
Yeah, how cool is that? So, and because
it's ridiculous.
And because these maser clocks, the hydrogen maser clocks, are on board, they've been able to use them. But not just that. You'd think that they're just measuring the time. It's taken 3 years' work to eliminate things like clock error, orbital drift, the fact that Earth's not this sphere, it's got bumps and lumps, and the influence of Earth's magnetic field, temperature variations, and even the persistent push of sunlight, solar radiation pressure. All of those had to be taken into account and taken away from all these mathematical equations and stuff to carefully get this brilliant measurement of Einstein's special relativity.
That has blown my mind. I love that.
General relativity, I should say, sorry.
Yeah, get it right.
How cool is that?
I think we need to put some more images up.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff.
So that stability is down to 4 picoseconds over 13 hours. 4 millionth of 1 millionth of a second. that's so amazing.
God.
Yeah.
That's about the same time as it takes for our listeners to correct us when we make an error.
Absolutely.
Which I love, by the way, guys. Carry on.
Carry on.
Especially when it's Matt.
Yes, it's too true. Jamie, what got launched this week?
Well, it was Chang'e 4.
Or Shang'e Sihao, as the Chinese, I think, nowhere near call it like that.
You're definitely getting it that down. I think that's much better. So, Matt, this is the robotic lander and rover, and it's landing on the 3rd of January 2019. So good luck. Not long.
Not long at all. And it's a really, really, really exciting mission, this one.
And this is first ever soft landing on the far side of the moon. Am I right?
First ever landing on the far side of the moon. It's going to be really exciting. We did actually have a chat with David Baker on podcast 73 about it.
Now, Matt, if they're landing on the far side of the moon, can I ask a question that I think a lot of people will be wondering?
Yeah, you do it.
Now, some people think that the far side of the moon is always dark. But why is that wrong?
I think it comes from Pink Floyd's album Dark Side of the Moon. There is no dark side. There is no dark side of the moon. Just because it's the far side of the moon that we never see.
We just can't see it because it's tidally locked with Earth.
Yeah, but of course it gets sunlight as we orbit round the sun and it orbits round Earth. It gets just as much sunlight as the other side, except it's less likely to be in shadow from the Earth.
So, what do they expect to get from this mission, Matt?
I think one of the most important things is the fact, because it's the far side, it's much more suitable for astronomy and observations, because you've got all this rock in the way of all our stupid telephone and television transmissions, etc., etc. So it's quite a lot quieter in terms of interference from Earth. So it allows you to study cosmic rays, low-frequency radio astronomy, and stuff like that. But also they want to measure the chemical composition of the rocks and soil and the temperatures on the other side.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think that the information that we're going to get back from this could mean that it could go on to fuel where we land, where we build potential habitats. What do you think, Matt?
Well, we're excited about the James Webb Telescope, but we'd imagine how amazing a telescope and how big you could build it if you built it on the far side of the moon. It would just be absolutely incredible. So that's what I'd be really excited about. But they're doing some other weird stuff. They're landing a container with potatoes and plant seeds as part of a biological experiment called the Lunar Mini Biosphere.
Right, someone call Matt Damon, quick.
It's in two parts, Chang'e 4. It's a lander that's got 2 cameras, a German-built radiation experiment, a spectrometer, so that's going to be performing the low-frequency radio astronomy observations, and there's a rover. And do you know what's on the rover?
I know that there's a panoramic camera, which is going to be epic.
So we're going to get some pickies, yep.
Just to wind the flat earthers up, who are going to say that the images are fake.
Yep.
How long can they keep saying that, eh?
Trump-style reasoning, as I call it.
Trump trolls. Yeah. What else have they got, Matt?
A radar to probe the lunar surface. And
nice.
Yeah, a spectrometer to have a look at the minerals, an imaging spectrometer to look at minerals, an experiment to examine the interaction of the solar wind with the lunar surface.
That is beautiful. Matt, can we go back to the potato seeds? I have a question.
Yes, go.
So are you saying that they're going to try and see what happens when they plant potato seeds in the quote-unquote soil on the moon?
No, I don't think they're going to put it into the regolith. I just don't know. I think we should just look it up.
I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah, the Lunar Mini Biosphere. Yes, I'd like to know more about it. It's quite hard with Chinese space stuff. It's always a little bit harder to get information about it.
Maybe the translation is a bit funny. Maybe they don't mean potatoes at all. Maybe they just mean that the rover's taking up a bag of crisps.
Well, let's not forget, of course, as well, there's the Kui Guai, or Magpie Bridge, which was a little satellite, which we did talk about on podcast 84, that went to Lagrange point L2 in a halo orbit.
Oh, yeah, keep talking.
And that, of course, because it's on the far side of the moon, we need some way of talking to this Chang'e 4. And do you know where it's going to land, Jamie?
Is it going to land on the von Karman crater?
Yes. And why do you think that that's symbolic?
Wasn't it Theodore von Karman, who was the PhD advisor of Juan Xuesen, the founder of the Chinese space program?
Yes. Yes, it was.
Oh, God.
So, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk about slam dunk.
You've done it.
I mean, that one is.
So, anyway, Jamie, I've got a fantastic interview now from the who's an expert about the rivals of the Chinese, the Indian space program.
This is very exciting.
Yeah, so this is part 1 of the Gurbir Singh interview about Indian space program.
You loved this, didn't you? I can't wait to hear this.
The book is absolutely brilliant. I have started reading it, and it's just a brilliant book. So go out and get Gurbir's book.
What's the title of the book?
The Indian Space Program, India's Incredible Journey from the Third World Towards the First.
Beautiful.
And he's also written a book by called Yuri Gagarin in London and Manchester, A Smile That Changed the World.
# stocking filler.
The Indian Space Program book will definitely fill your stocking. It's a monster of a book.
Is it a Bible? I like it.
Yeah, so it's a great read, and he's a really nice person to talk to.
So Matt, this is going to be a 2-parter.
Yeah,
let's hear it.
Batsono. Hello, Gurbir. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, Matt. Excellent. And how are you?
Very well indeed. Thank you very much. And what part of the world are you Skyping in from?
From a very hot and sunny Manchester area.
Well, let me tell you this. I lived in Manchester for 4 years, and my memory of it is that it rained every day.
Yeah, quite right. That's how I remember it as well. Hot and sunny all the time.
That's exactly right. So you've recently written a book about the Indian space program. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So it's having had an interest in astronomy and space since childhood, like most people. I've been interested in the growth of the space programs around the world. I remember very well the days when it was just America and the USSR doing the space race during the 60s and 70s. But since then, of course, now there's about 70 odd countries which have something in the way of a space program. And I was born in India, so I automatically have an interest in understanding how India's space program has been evolving. And when I looked around a few years ago, I couldn't find a book that described it all. There were smaller pieces or individual chapters in books that might speak about some aspects of the Indian space program, but there wasn't anything detailed about the bigger picture. So in 2012, I set out to do some research. I visited India 3 separate occasions, looking at some of the individual sites. India has had a space program since, I suppose, when it launched its very first rocket into space, which came from the US. It was an Apache Nike rocket that went into suborbital flight on the 21st of November 1963. And at that time, India was evolving its economy. It was not long after it had attained its independence. It was looking for developing a nation on the forefront of newer technologies, which is the sort of thing that I remember vaguely from here. You might recall Harold Wilson, the old Labour Prime Minister.
Just about, yeah.
Well, he spoke about the white heat of technology, which was the way that Britain would evolve and develop its economy in the 1960s and 70s, and India was doing likewise. So it started really very early on.
It's a really, really fascinating program, and often it's really, really underlooked, especially considering India's population is going to be overtaking China soon, and the economy is obviously a huge deal in terms of global economies. So it's really interesting, isn't it, that they embraced technology and that was the way that they saw the future of the country. So how deeply does the book go into that sort of detail in terms of the politics behind it early on?
Well, that's actually one of the reasons why it's quite a large book now. It's about 600 pages, is because the historical aspect on why India had a space program intrigued me quite a lot. And it was down to a couple of guys. There's many people, of course, involved in India's space program. But if I'll just mention a couple of names. The Homi Bhabha was a nuclear physicist. He studied here in the UK at Cambridge just before the war, and he was around in the late 1920s, 1930s, when there was a great deal of activity, particularly in how the atom and molecules were constructed. And his work was to do with antimatter, which was fairly new, and his work led him to meet up with many of the well-known scientists of that era, Schrödinger, Paul Dirac, Albert Einstein, and he in fact had many meetings here with some of these people in Manchester, and he in fact got an offer of a job just before he left for India in 1939 from Liverpool. But the Liverpool John Moores University, Liverpool University rather, and in the end he didn't take that, but he was offered another job by a guy called Patrick Blackett, who had set up a nuclear physics department in Manchester. And whilst he was away in India, in 1939, war broke out and he never quite made it. And because of he had a lot of connections in the West, and he was obviously a very bright fella. The Indians, and he had very large, strong connections. I'm sure you're familiar with the Tata name in connection with India.
Yeah. The steel company.
Steel.
Is that right?
And now cars.
Everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Consultancy. They've always had a really huge portfolio. He was married to somebody from the Tata family, and then so he had influence, power, and wealth, and he was convinced by the then first Prime Minister of the newly independent India, Nehru, to set up institutions of research in India, and he got funding, and he did so. And although a lot of people thought, he was a bit crazy, given that his institution, which was set up and is one of the places I visited, he was looking at how mesons and positrons behaved at nuclear relativistic fields. And a lot of people thought, well, why do you want to do that? In India, there's a lot of people who don't have basic education, roofs over their head, no jobs. But he decided very early on that by engaging with science and technology and doing the research and development, it was a way of bringing India into the 20th century much more quickly than it would have done otherwise. And he also at that time decided, just after Sputnik, that India should have a space program. And he put another guy, and this is the second name I'll mention, Vikram Sarabhai, in charge of what then was called the Indian Committee for Space Research. Now, you're probably too young to remember Committee for Space Research.
Definitely.
COSPAR. And this was...
Oh, actually, I do remember. Actually, when now you said that, I do remember that. But yeah, probably I couldn't tell you anything more than the name.
and it's set up in the late 1950s, and it's still around. But that's how India got into the space program, and in the end, they got a lot of collaborative support, and this has been another feature throughout India's development of its space program. They've always engaged with Russia or USSR in those days, France and CNES as it is now, and America. The first rocket I mentioned that was launched from Indian soil came from America. And it was the driver in every case was so that India could have its economy develop on new technologies. And space technology was seen as a way to not only help out the farmers and fishermen, which at that time and indeed today, India still relies on a very largely agricultural economy, but by providing information from in-orbit resources, satellites, they could provide details. In fact, one of the earliest experiments that was done from helicopter using the old Hasselblad cameras indicated that India could benefit by having spaceborne assets and looking down at India's huge landmass and providing information for farmers on how they could detect diseases on plants, determine where to farm, and indeed where to find water. And later, other additional services came along, like meteorology, which again is very important for a region which suffers from the monsoons historically very badly. And all the information that has come from space, either from Earth-based Earth observation satellites or indeed from remote sensing or navigational and meteorological satellites, has helped not only to develop that economy that you referred to about India, but also save many people's lives because of the evacuation that can take place through early warning notices.
It's always an argument, isn't it? And this one's always levied at the Indian space program, is why Britain still sends foreign aid to India, even though you have a more developed space program than Britain. And it always sounds like off the bat that's a weird conundrum. But as soon as you start to understand the benefits of having a space program, and like you said, it saves lives, and it's part of how you develop a nation. Do you hear that argument a lot, and do you have to sort of wade in and educate people, I suppose, into seeing it in a different way?
Absolutely, and in fact, the last couple of chapters in the book I deal with that, and I was quite amazed thinking that India was still getting aid from the UK, but going back a couple of years. The UK, as you know, we had our own recession here in the UK and difficulties. Quite apart from that, India, the UK has been winding down its contribution of about £300 million a year it used to donate. And that's pretty much zero by now, or will be soon by the end of this year. But apart from that, not many people know that although India has traditionally received economic financial aid for many years, now India is a net donor to its regional countries. So, for example, it provides Africa about 10 billion over a very long period of time towards development projects in Africa. And the African countries send students to India for training. There's also a contribution of about $1 billion to Afghanistan to fight against terrorism and rebuilding that's necessary there. And there's also been huge contribution towards the countries such as Bhutan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka. And, you know, during the last 25 years of the previous century, India's poverty levels came down from 50% to 25%. I'm sure it wasn't just down to the space program, but you can have an improving situation with national poverty statistics and have a space program, as indeed the US had, you know, during the 1960s and 70s, during Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo. US had poverty levels of between 12 and 15%. So you can have both a space program and a reduction in poverty, and indeed having a space program doesn't mean you can eradicate poverty anyway.
I'm fully subscribed to you've got to go out there and do other things rather than just directly tackle problems. You've got to be out there doing things like space, and clearly when America was massively involved with space, it helped their economy and helped the country, and it's helping transform India as well. India's first satellite. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Back in 1971. Russia came up to India and said, look, we can launch a satellite for you if you want. And this is on the back of about a decade earlier, America came along and said, look, we can give you a rocket if you want to get your space program started. So there's always this tussle between the two superpowers then to get India to subscribe to their political system and get engagement. So in 1971, Russia came and offered to launch India's first satellite, and Vikram Sarabhai, who was then the chairman, decided that they would do that, and they put a guy called Professor U.R. Rao in charge. And now, sadly, this was in 1971. Before the year's end, Vikram Sarabhai died, and U.R. Rao had this project that he'd said yes to, and Vikram Sarabhai was highly respected throughout India, not least by his colleagues. And Rao insisted on carrying through this particular project. And also because it was essentially free, it was a good way to jumpstart India's satellite program. So he decided that they would build a satellite called Aryabhata. It was an experimental satellite. It was spin stabilized, and it had solar panels on the side, solar cells on the side, not solar panels. It went into eventually low Earth orbit. But this was the very early days, and one of the things that they didn't have, in fact, most of the people working on this satellite had never seen a satellite. But Professor Rao had worked on, in the US, in Houston and in MIT, he'd worked on the Pioneer spacecraft and the Explorers. He was also a high-energy physicist by training. So he had hands-on experience in building satellites. But when it came to building one in India, they started from the very lowest possible starting point. It was eventually launched in 1975 by the USSR on behalf of India. And India, by that time, had a very basic receiving or ground station. So apart from the support they got from some individual solar cells and batteries, they produced everything in-house in India and tested it, and it was launched by Russia. And then all the telemetry and communications was also conducted in India. And interestingly, so this is in the early 1970s, and you'll remember that the UK in 1971 closed down its space launch program, and the site that Britain used was in Australia, a place called Woomera. And just by coincidence of timing, they had two ground stations with all the telemetry equipment, which, as a result of closing down this operation, Britain was selling these off auction very cheaply. India acquired one of these telemetry stations, which came to Sriharikota, and it was used to receive signals from Aryabhata in 1975.
Yeah, that really is a cool piece of information. So one picture that I always love, and I hopefully you can put a bit of background to this and whether it's true or whether it really is a bit of a kind of a fable, is the satellite on the back of a kind of horse and cart type situation. Can you tell us a little bit about that photo and whether and what the reality behind it was? If you know the photo I'm referring to.
I do indeed. In fact, I'll see if I can locate and tweet it. It's an iconic photo that was taken of the satellite. You can see the satellite. It's not covered up or anything. On, as you say, a bullock cart. And the idea behind that was not, as many people think, to transport it from one place to another. And it's quite natural to think that was the case, because in the past there had been cases where you can see nose cones of rockets being transported on bicycles, and that was about a decade earlier than that. But the purpose of moving this satellite on a cart was because at that time the testing facilities did not exist, and one of the testings that you probably know, that a satellite before it's launched has to be tested for, in addition to the pressure and temperature chambers that satellites can be put through to make sure they survive the elements that are present in space. One of the other testing is to make sure that it can receive and transmit the electronic emissions from the receivers and transmitters correctly. And they didn't have one of what you might recognize as an anechoic chamber. This is one of those rooms where you have, as a sound engineer, I'm sure you've probably been in many of them. I haven't.
Well, you should go. You're not too far from one of the biggest, which is the one at Salford University, bizarrely.
Oh, really? And I understand, and do feel free to add to this, that although in acoustics we're talking about sound waves, but here the principle is to do with electromagnetic radiation. And what they wanted, and this is where the bullock cart came in, is that there was no electronic emissions that you would have had if you had a car with a motor and ignition system, and indeed anywhere close to a larger city. So a bullock cart was used to move the satellite as it was transmitting and sending to test its transmitter and receiver.
That's very much like the pencil versus pen solution, isn't it, with the writing on the moon, which I'm told is a myth. India's got a Mars program. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you might vaguely remember in 2011, a Russian probe was to go to Mars, and China had a little lander on it for Phobos. Phobos Grunt was the name of the mission. Unfortunately, it had a launch problem and never left Earth orbit. So in 2012, and this is now quite readily openly stated, at the time it wasn't, but India took that decision to go to Mars because the Chinese probe had failed, and they knew that there was going to be this launch window in 2013. So they announced the program in 2012 after the failure of the Chinese probe in the previous year, and then built this really small technology demonstrator spacecraft to go to Mars at the next launch window, and it arrived there in 2014. It's got a very tiny payload, 5 instruments, 15 kilograms in total.
Wow.
So it's very small.
Yeah.
And all of them, it's surprising, but they launched it in time. It got there. It's in orbit, and it's been orbit and operating successfully ever since. Although there's one problem with the methane sensor, but on board, everything else has been operating really very well, very successfully. And it's been, I think, everybody's surprised, but it's been one of the highlights for India in the last few years that India's got an active probe around Martian orbit right now.
I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it. So how do you pronounce the name of the probe?
Okay, it's called Mangalyaan, or usually most people refer to it as the Mars Orbiter Mission, or MOM. In fact, there's going to be a film out in India later on, early next year, I think, called Space Moms.
Oh, no.
It's a story about all the women who worked on the Indian space program, and particularly in the 2 key centers of the Indian space program. They're all over the place, all over India, but 2 of them, one of them is the Sriharikota, which is in south, just north of Chennai, but it's still in southern India. But most of the spacecraft and the sensors and instruments are built in way down south in Kerala, and that's called the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center now. And it's surprising, but in Kerala, unlike the rest of India, there's an extremely high level of education for females, and consequently, there's a lot of women work in Sriharikota and in the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, and it's called Space Moms.
Wow. Is it done in a Bollywood style, or is it a bit more Western than that?
I'm sure they won't be able to avoid having some singing and dancing in there. They'll squeeze it in.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
But I don't know. It's going to be like a documentary style. But whilst I'm at it, I'll just mention another film. The paperwork has been done, apparently. Again, it should be probably done by next year or the year after. It's a film about India's first astronaut, Rakesh Sharma. And he is being played by India's best-known rock film stars, Shah Rukh Khan. And that should also generate a lot of interest and enthusiasm in India about India's space program.
Wow, it's amazing, isn't it? There's only 1 letter difference between India's first astronaut and Britain's.
Yeah, Sharma.
Am I right in saying there's only 1 Indian astronaut so far?
Yes. So this was the a 7 or 8 day trip that Rakesh Sharma spent in Salyut 7 in 1984, in April 1984. However, he, as with all missions, space missions, had another backup crew. So there was another Indian astronaut, Ravish Malhotra, who also did the training with him in Star City, starting from 1980 onwards. They were both out there with their families, but it was Rakesh Sharma who did the flight. But Ravish Malhotra had the training, but it never flew. And you may recall during the early days of the space shuttle, the space shuttle used to take on board payload specialists. And the idea was that it was then used as part of a commercial arrangement that US would launch foreign satellites and take an astronaut from that country on board as a payload specialist. There were two guys who want to be trained for a mission to take India's. It's the second satellite that India had purchased. So, apart from these, in the early 1980s, India decided that communication satellites, meteorology, and Earth observation was an investment worth making. So they committed themselves to a series of satellites called INSAT, INSAT 1A to 1D. And these 4 satellites were made by the American company Ford, just like the cars. And those were the only satellites that India's purchased. I think technically they did actually purchase another one in 2008 from Israel because they needed something for photo reconnaissance fairly quickly. But those 4 satellites, they were purchased from Ford Aerospace. The second one of these, INSAT 1B, was going to be launched by the space shuttle. So 2 Indian astronauts, and this time from ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization. These were scientists and engineers, went there. They were called N.C. Bhatt and P. Radhakrishnan. Both of them are still around. I spoke to them for my research. Both retired, of course. But just before they'd been selected, gone through all this training process, and they had some initial training in the US as well. But Challenger disaster of 1986 brought the commercial part of this space shuttle to an end, and with it ended their hopes for flights aboard the into space. So they had training but never flew. And I'll just mention two more. Both were females and had a connection with India. Kalpana Chawla made 2 flights to space through the space shuttle. Sadly, she died during the 2003 Columbia re-entry disaster that took place. And she was born in India, but at the time she flew, she had taken on American citizenship. And then finally, Sunita Williams, who's a NASA astronaut, still active. She, her dad comes from India. Her mother is Serbian. They live in the US. She has no direct connection with India other than her father. But those are the only Indian astronauts so far.
Well, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's quite sad that four astronauts trained and only one managed the trip. I should imagine that's a pretty common story. I should imagine. So it's pretty tough. So you've the Indian space program are looking towards their own human space capability, aren't they, at the moment?
Yeah, and this is one of the more recent announcements. In August this year, the Indian Prime Minister announced that before the 75th anniversary of Indian independence in 2022, he'd like to see an Indian astronaut launched from India on an Indian spacecraft. Apparently, some of the indications are that it was a bit of a shock and surprise to ISRO. which is they have been surprising because they have been working on some of the subsystems. For example, they've done a couple of flights of what they call mock-up crew capsules. One in 2007. They actually had now this was just a capsule recovery experiment, as they called it. It was not designed for crew, but it's the first time that India launched something, stayed in space for a couple of weeks, and then it landed back on Earth, or a splashdown, and it was recovered, and it's now in the museum in the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center in Kerala. So they did verified that they could remotely control something, bring it back to Earth, make sure they had the re-entry systems and guidance and navigation in place. That was in 2007. They also tested on a suborbital flight. I think it was 2014. A much slightly larger and a mock-up crew capsule. They had no crew on board, and it was a suborbital flight on one of the first test flights of their heavy launch vehicle, and that went really well. And now one other thing that they did in connection with human spaceflight was earlier this year was a pad abort test, whereby they just made sure that if there was a fire at the pad at launch or immediately soon after, the astronauts could be detached from the launch vehicle and land separately in a 2 or 3 kilometers away. An interesting aside, I mentioned Rakesh Sharma. His flight is in 1984. I discovered afterwards, after writing the book, and I did contact him, he was at the launch of the Soyuz flight in September. He was in USSR at the time anyway, readying for his flight. And in that September, when there was there was a fire at the launch, during a launch attempt, and the pad abort rockets fired and saved the 3 crew on board, one of which was sat next to Rakesh Sharma in April 1984, just 7 months later.
Wow.
So it's really quite interesting. He never didn't speak about it, but to be be there watching this 6 months before you're going to be sitting in a similar place, it's quite amazing.
Quite something, isn't it, that one? So I think that's the only time it's happened, isn't it? It's the only time there's been a pad abort. Is that right?
I think there was one other, and of course, more recently, we had one earlier this year, which actually at the launch pad. But it just goes to show it's rockets are still, despite all the confidence we can now have through just the sheer experience, the number of launches we have had, is still quite a risky business.
What did you think of that interview, Jamie? Well,
so
far.
I'll tell you what I thought of it. I thought it was Ika.
What's Ika?
Ika, Matt, is Hindi for the word ace.
Really?
Yeah.
What's even more weird is that ace in Gujarati is Isa. E-S-A.
No way.
What way?
This is insane. I can feel another tattoo coming on. Well, I'll tell you what. That was ace. I can't wait to read that book.
Jamie, I've got some space fact.
You better.
I got a space fact for you.
Hit me.
NASA astronauts are going back to the moon, and when they get there, they may need to take quake-proof housing.
What?
Yeah, that's the conclusion of Clive R. Neal, who's the Associate Professor of Civil Engineering and Geological Sciences at the University of Notre Dame. He's been analysing the Apollo mission seismometers on the moon.
Oh, so he reckons there's been some rumbles up there.
There's been more than some rumbles. There's 4 different types of moonquake. This is really interesting.
Okay.
So you've got your deep moonquake, which are probably caused by tides, like tidal forces, that is.
You've also got vibrations from the impact of meteorites.
Yes. You've got thermal quakes, so that's when obviously when you've got the sun shining on a bit of the planet all day long, and then it goes cold and then heats up again. So that changing temperature causes the crust to kind of expand and cause quakes. But the fourth kind is the most interesting.
It really is. Shallow moonquakes, only 20 or 30 kilometres below the surface. Wow. All tend to be mild. However, shallow moonquakes can register up to 5.5 on the Richter scale.
Which is massive. That's
big.
Yeah, that is big. And apparently they last for about 10 minutes. And that's been described by Clive R. Neal as as the moon ringing like a bell.
Well, that would swallow up any rover in its path.
Yeah, so it's not actually that trivial a thing at all. So they don't know what causes them. They're actually not sure what causes these quakes. And all of this quake information, 28 shallow moonquakes, were observed from 1972 to 1977 on the seismometers placed on the moon by Apollos 12, 14, 15 and 16.
Oh, that is insane. Well, maybe our little Chinese rover can unlock some mysteries.
I don't think it will. I don't think it's got that kind of seismometer on it. I think they need to sort of distribute lots and lots of different seismometers all over the surface of the planet, especially the lunar poles. Because there's literally no information about that whatsoever. They think they might be caused by the rims of very large young craters sort of slumping in on themselves, eventually just going and collapsing.
Hang on a minute. Young craters, isn't that your rap name?
Young craters. I'm bare good at rapping.
And my rap name is occasionally Slump.
It's what happens to people in their armchairs when they listen to this podcast.
Oh, and let's not talk about large rims. Okay, so we need to move on.
Yes.
Talking about seismometers, we can't stress enough how much we want to big up our Patreons.
Absolutely. So we got a couple. Welcome to Joseph and Harvard, who've joined this week. Well done.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining. And of course...
What an exclusive club they've joined.
And we should give a shout out to the greatest human beings on Earth, our Skylon contributors.
Just the kings.
Bob, Darren, Justin, John, Julio, Catherine, Anthony, Kaylee, Matt and Karel.
Can't thank you guys enough. It's a massive, massive help. It means we can continue doing this. It means that we can get through Christmas without Matt crying.
And not only that, I want to give a special thanks to John, because he's been sending in some great suggestions for new
What's he
bits
been
on
saying?
the show. What do you think about this, Jamie? Jamie's visions of the future.
Oh, yes.
We should definitely have that as a slot on the show. Jamie's visions of the future. And then you just throw out one of your little tidbits of what life's going to be like in the year 2070.
Ooh. This is brilliant. I love this. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
What do you want me to start it now? I mean, I haven't had much thinking time.
Well, let's start next week. You can start next week.
Okay, I'm going to start next week, John. Prepare to hear my vision of the future.
I love John because he sent me a picture of me on the Mars surface.
Oh, you're not going to go on about this again.
Yeah,
Why are you rubbing this in my face for the third podcast in a row?
Because you obviously didn't. You forgot to put your name on the...
I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted.
Are you sure you didn't?
Oh, I can't remember. And I think that's why I'm even more gutted, because I might be. Oh, dear.
Let's just pretend you have.
Let's just pretend I have, everyone, okay?
We got some good responses as well to our show about generation ships.
Oh, people seem to be loving it.
Yeah, I really like this one from Rebecca.
Here we go.
She's been reading Kim Stanley Robinson, his novel Aurora. And apparently that deals very much with the whole concept of generation ships.
It does.
And so she highly recommends reading that book. And also 2312 is his book about world ships.
Oh, well, thank you, Rebecca. I will absolutely look into that and get the book.
I might actually download those onto Audible and do it on my huge drives to work these days.
Rebecca, if you're listening, let me ask you a question. What do you think is the most likely of everything you've read. Tweet us, Instagram us, email us, let us know. We'll read it out next week.
Keep it coming in. Jamie.
Hello.
I'm going to just big up everyone, all our listeners. Thank you so much for joining us on our voyage through space and time.
We have the best listeners in the world.
Indeed.
And even in other worlds.
Even in Jamie's bubble universe.
That is going to be one of my visions of the future. But I'll just that's just a teaser. You know?
Yeah.
It's just a teaser. All right, I'm off to Marrakesh, so I'll see you next week.
I'm off to find out what a perfect totient number is.
I'm going to look at some stars from the Sahara Desert.
Oh, you jammy.
What's great is you realise that we all live on one Earth.
We all live in a beautiful world, as Chris Martin once sang.
He sang it way better.
Never mind.
It's just beautiful, Matt. All right, well, let's love you and leave you. Have a good weekend, everyone, and be safe.
Bye, Spodcats.
Bye. Bye.